What?
What? Where the hell are we?
I feel a Gatorade betrayal happening because I'm
I
drinking
know.
coffee. I don't know about you losers.
What's
I got
up?
tea.
I was not ready for the music to end that soon. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Live here on Keystroke Medium. I am Josh Hayes here with Scoot Moonay and Chuck Manley. I like pie. I didn't even see that till show started.
He's changed his tag like 4 times while we were talking.
No,
Josh is
just
up.
twice.
Not
Twice
paid
is
attention.
an even number, just like 4.
Well, I saw yours, and then I put "It is what it is, Manly," and then I looked at yours again, and I was like, "No, I need to keep the theme."
Yeah, you got to have the like theme.
Yeah, so I put "I like pie."
Mm-hmm.
I like
Yes.
Pizza Thief.
Good.
That shows how much I pay attention. Welcome everybody to the live show on Monday, September 27th. Can you guys believe it's almost October?
That's right. I want a refund because this year has been like
This year has been stupid.
Crazy, man.
I can't believe it.
all the shit I was going to get done this year. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah,
We're
like
out a year.
I really need to get started on that.
Right. I'm like, I'll do it tomorrow, and then now it's December, and you're like, shit. Let's see. Corey Gillum had the first comment of the day, so he gets the Keystroke Medium Golf Clap of Appreciation.
Yeah, it might be like might be a hat trick. I think that's 3 weeks in a row.
3 weeks in a row. Congratulations. You get 2 golf claps of appreciation today.
Mhm.
Chuck just he did 1 clap. And that's all you get. 1 clap.
No, 1, 2.
We go to work out at the gym, and we have this one coach always wants to. We're going to do a high energy ending. Everybody 2 claps, and it'll be like, and then you go 1, 2, 3, and I'll go. Just because I'm difficult.
Because you're difficult.
And try to keep them out of time with everybody else.
Nagling, what's up? Finally catching an episode live. Yes.
Welcome back.
It's really the only way to do it unless you listen to the audio feed. And if you listen to the audio feed and you don't watch the live,
What the hell?
I mean, thanks for listening. I mean, that's
probably
awesome.
You should really do both, because you should watch live, like and subscribe, and then later you should leave a review on the podcast, and things like that. Share it with some friends.
Tom Hoddle is here. What's up, Tom? Keith Taylor. Hello. Lou, what's up? Hey, Lou's on time this week.
What?
We won't mention that he was late last week at all. Cut that out of the actual episode when it airs.
I didn't hear that at all. I don't know what you said.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's October. I know that it's October because at Sam's Club last week they had this deal on Sam Adams special October brew, and I've never done this before, but I was standing and looking at the beer, going, I want to try it, and I grabbed there was like a, I don't know, it's like a 30 pack of bottles, and I never having tried it before, picked it up and put it in my cart, and then I turned and saw that there was a 12 pack on the.
Too late. Get the
thing right next to, and this other guy comes up and he's like, "Have you had that?" And I go, "No." And he's like, "Yeah, I haven't had it either, but sometimes." I'm like, "Yeah." I picked up the 30 pack and put it back and got the 12 pack, and I was like, "I've never turned in more beer and got less beer ever."
Is it the Oktoberfest or the sampler pack?
No, it's the Oktoberfest.
Yeah, I like Oktoberfest.
No, yeah, I had some and I was like, "Damn, I should have kept the 30 pack." But it's good.
You got to pay attention now, because a case of beer used to be 24 cans, or a case of Diet Coke used to be 24 cans, and then they went to 20. But they didn't tell anybody, and it looked just like a 24 pack. But if you counted, there was only 20 in there, and now I think now they're down to like 15.
Corporate scumbags.
I know that's wrong. Let's rise up.
Yeah, we're gonna boycott cases and just buy 12 packs from now on.
Yeah, that'll teach those motherfuckers.
That's right.
You can't sell me less Coke. Let's see. Scott, you had a great idea to talk about building weapons in sci-fi, and that's interesting because that topic is something that I've been playing around with in my Savage Stars, not Sentinel, not whatever the hell I'm going to call it. Some week.
Sci-fi name.
Yes. And I've been playing around with a magic system in the fantasy book that I'm working on too. And so it kind of coincides. So I can't wait to talk about that because I have some bones to pick with you guys on that. But before we
I don't see how this is my fault.
I don't know that. Wow.
Yes.
It sounds like he's bringing it, man.
I'm bringing the pain. I'm actually I'm there today. So, hey, let's talk about updates. I'll go first because I never get to go first, and it's my show, and I want to go first.
You can go first and last.
You can go first.
I'll give 2 updates.
Yeah, you can have an update of the
You
update.
pick on us every week. So that's
Let's see. So
bully.
I did a lot of plotting and planning last week. I was doing some work on Tranquility 3, the collab project I've got with Devin C. Ford. We're doing the planning for book 3 a little differently than we did for book 1 and 2, and it's coming along pretty nicely. We should be starting writing here, like actually writing the book here in the next couple of weeks or so after we get it all planned out. I've got this remarkable. I did a lot of work on it last week, doing some magic world building for this fantasy project that I'm working on, and taking some notes from the editor that looked over my initial outline and plan, and kind of revamping the system that I had in my mind, and kind of creating some new things that make it a little more concrete. So it's not like a soft, like it is a soft magic system in that it's not really explained like a typical hard, like a Sanderson, like a Mistborn magic system would be explained. But I'm trying to give it a little bit more concreteness. So yeah, no Sandersons were hard. That's right. I'm trying to get a little bit more concreteness to the story and the lore, so it's a little bit more understandable. Sanderson is merely okay. That's a good point, Scott. So we'll keep going with the show. And what else? What else have I done? Oh, I finished reading the Sons of the Black. Well, I didn't finish reading the series. I finished the third book in the Forgotten Warrior saga. There you go, Scott. Chuck bought it. And I finished the third book and realized it's not a trilogy. And then Wikipedia did it. Is that a word? Wikipedia did it?
Wikipedia did it?
I Googled
I don't
it.
know.
Looked it
and
up.
It sounds a little bit off color.
Yeah, it's weird. It actually looks like it's going to be 5 books. And I don't know when 4 and 5 are going to come out.
It's like Monty Python. 3,
Yep.
5, 3, sir.
It's like you guys. So Scott, you listen to a lot of audiobooks, and I look at the time like left played, right? I'm like,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
got a couple hours left, and I'm like, okay, we're getting close to the end. Like sometimes you'll listen, and it's got an hour left, and then you're like, man, it feels like it's wrapping up, and then the story ends, but then there's like 45 minutes left of like, well, listen to this sample from this other story. And
Yeah,
I'm
I
like,
hate that.
you tricked me. You tricked me. And so last night, completely the opposite happened. I'm reading, and I've got like, I don't know, like 10 pages left. And I'm like, this cannot be the end of this thing. Nothing is resolved. There's no ending to the overall story. I get to the end, and I'm like, there's going to be another book. There's going to be another book. And I thought it was a trilogy. So, but I really do highly recommend it, even though it's not finished. And I know a lot of people don't like starting series that aren't finished. But the book is really good. I was telling Chuck in the pre-show that there are some things about the book that I guessed about the world and the world building, and some stuff that I'm like, I think this is what he's doing. But like, so there's some elements that they introduce into the book that I'm like, ha, I was right. And then at the very end of this last book, the third book, he threw in something else, and it completely changed what I thought has still the, man, it's really hard to talk about this without spoiling it. The basic fundamental thing that happened, that I know happened, it doesn't explain, but I'm like, okay, that's what he's doing. It's happened in the book. That's part of his world building. But when and where it happened is different now, because I was thinking it was one thing and it became another thing. So anyway, read the book. At some point we'll have a spoiler podcast about the series, because it's really fun. The what he's doing with the world, and then what I think he's doing with it. We'll talk about it.
Let's put that on the calendar for 2024 to make sure everybody's read it.
In season 8, we're going to talk about the Forgotten Warrior
saga. That's right.
Hey, what's up, Guy Anthony DeMarco? Welcome to the show. Welcome. But other than that, not doing a whole lot. I worked this weekend up in Claflin. I'm getting ready. I'm going to do some laundry, and then head up again tomorrow to work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And hopefully get some more work done while I'm up there. But that's all I got for this week. I like pie. You go next.
Well, as you can probably hear, a family of frogs has taken up residence in my throat for some unseemly reason. But usual stuff. Just if I can manage to stick to my schedule, I'm about a week away from the end of Jack Dark Book 2,
Nice.
and I have a hard deadline of mid-March for Jack Dark Book 3. And as soon as we're done with this, I have to take my daughter to back-to-back softball practices, which will be, 5 or 6 hours out of my evening. And I'm going to take my laptop with me and hopefully get some work done while she's doing all that. But that's really about it. Just the usual family and books.
You should take a voice recorder and sit on the stands next to some like completely unassuming person and just voice it.
Talk
And then
about
he ripped the guy's head off and shoved it down his throat.
Yeah, talk about Fey assassins and red caps.
Probably
That would
couldn't. They probably wouldn't hear you all of the screaming and yelling.
Yeah.
All you'd have this weird transcription of all the angry parents screaming at at the ref and whatnot.
Well, it's just practice, so it's not too bad. But the games, you're right. There's some guys who just get completely out of hand. I mean, just completely.
I'm like that. My wife is actually worse than me, but I'm like that at games. I'm like, no, or like Jordan's like digging in the sand, like she's supposed to be playing. She's digging in the sand and throwing it. I'm like, Jordan, pay attention to the batter.
Oh yeah, if you ever had a kid doing martial art forms in the outfield, then you've been a proud parent.
Oh yeah. When she was younger and just started playing, there would be kids who would literally just like lay down and stare up at the clouds.
Dude, might as well.
She's 13 now, playing JV high school, so they have a little higher expectations.
No nappy.
This one kid was like running his hands through the baseline, like the white baseline, and of course,
the chalk.
It's the YMCA, right? So they just draw all the way across the base. Like they don't even stop. They just draw the line across the base, and the kid's like down there putting his hands in the chalk and then patting them together. And I thought he was gonna lick it off his hands, and I'm like, don't lick that. Okay, don't lick it.
Just see what happens. I think I should take the line and like steer it out into a different place and see if the runner follows it.
They just follow the line. Yeah.
Yep. Eddie says he's here for the weapons. Going to get into the weapon system. So,
yes. Of course.
Good topic today.
What about you, Scott? What's your update, man?
So I did bunches of writing. Trying to think. I've been pretty happy with my book bundle. I don't normally talk about marketing, but I did a book bundle of the They Came for Blood, which it sounds like a space vampire series, but really it's more of an alien invasion series. The blood sucking aliens is really coincidental or inconsequential to the plot. But anyway, I really like it, and it's gotten a lot more life. It's doing very well. I've never had a book bundle that's done that good, so I'm pretty happy about that. It makes it feel like it's worth your while. Working on The Last Reaper 12. The Last Reaper 11 is through editors and beta readers, and the beta readers really like it. I was super nervous because I took some big chances with the story, as I've talked about, I think, on previous shows. So that's like, whew, thank God. And then working on Blue Sun Armada and just playing around with all kinds of stuff. Last couple of days, I've been in like multiple project hell where every old book cover that I bought, I see, I'm like, oh, I need to get to work on that. And so I have like 3,000 words a day, but only in 600 word increments on any one story. So hard to make a lot of progress with that. Right. So kind of cleaning up, getting ready for a move. We got approved on our loan for our new house. Now we're just talking to builders, and the good news is lumber is coming down. Lumber came down $11,000 between our first meeting and our second meeting.
Oh, wow.
And so that's hopefully that'll stick. The problem is there's supply chain issues at every step in the process. So what would have taken 6 months is probably going to take 7.5, 8 months, which probably means 9.5, 10 months with our luck.
There's a lot of supply chain issues across everything.
The
grocery stores, everywhere.
Yeah, it can be a little thing. The big problem they were having during our first meeting a couple weeks ago is getting a basement poured. Apparently around here, it's really hard to get a basement poured. And every place has basements in Kansas. And then I've just noticed like houses being built in our neighborhood. It was sitting there with no doors on it for like months. I thought maybe it was Ellen's house or something. She's not getting any attention at all. And but now they're building on it again. So it's always just one thing or another slows things down, and we're excited. So the big thing is we picked a really modern house. Literally, there will not be any other houses in Wichita like our house, because we found one online and we did all the virtual tours and really loved it, right? And so, but we thought it was sold. Well, it's not sold. It's still a model. So we went and looked at it, and I was nervous. Like, we're going to build this really kind of crazy avant-garde modern house and hate it when we move in. Well, we went in and we loved it completely. It was very, very awesome.
Nice.
And so we're very happy about that. And so we're going to try to move forward on it. So that's good. So I'm happy about that. That makes the wife happy. And if mama's happy, then everybody else can be happy too.
True.
Clearly.
The truth.
Clearly. So that's it. That's with mine, working, writing. I've kind of come to a weird place where I don't really worry about retiring from the day job, just because it lends a little bit of stability, of income, and kind of puts some pressure on me to write like a madman all the time. So we'll see if that holds out, or if I lose my shit in another week or two because I want to retire and I can't. But anyway, I could retire a lot easier if I just made better financial choices. Somebody said that the first thing you should do if you want to be a full-time writer is learn to live frugally.
Mm-hmm.
But I like stuff apparently, and I like people to have stuff. So my wife's like, "Hey, I want this." I'm like, "Okay, get it."
Right.
That's my go-to response. So.
Well, let's see. Kayleen came in and said, I came in and Josh is talking about licking stuff off people's hands. It's not what I said. It's not what I said. You're misquoting me. Roll the tape back. It's ridiculous.
Go back to where he's demonstrating what he thought they were going to do.
Yes.
Well, and as I said, I'm going to do 2 updates, because I'm going to do one in the beginning and one in the back half. And it kind of worked out incidentally because I forgot something in my update, so I'm going to do it again. So it kind of falls in line.
You better make a note. I think that kid with the chalk should have done the orc thing from Lord of the Rings, where he puts a big print on his face. That would have been pretty cool right there.
Or just like made like lines that like come down his face, like warrior.
Yeah.
So anyway, my second part of the update is I have been.
Well, I thought you meant the end of the episode, but go ahead.
Yeah,
maybe there'll be a third one.
And we're done. So I have been brought on to the team at Bain Publishing to help with their Bain free radio hour podcast. The guy that normally does it is moving on to a different company. And so they're bringing in a couple of us to kind of pick up the reins where he left off and carry on with the podcast. So Tony reached out and asked me if I'd be willing to help out, and I said absolutely. I think my first episode will air in the November timeframe, and basically it's going to be kind of an ensemble cast almost, where I will do an episode or an interview one week, and then another guy is doing an interview another week, and we're not going to be live. It's not going to be like we're together talking to someone. It's me one-on-one with the author, and then I'll send that interview to the producer. They put it together with all their other stuff, and then it'll air, and there'll be video and audio available. So anyway, I'm really excited to hop on board with that, and just gets Keystroke and me and a whole bunch of authors that I know some more publicity, some more action, and it'll be fun. So once that episode comes out, I'll link it in the group, and everybody can go laugh at me, and because they want me to wear a suit, and I'm like, guys, have you ever seen me wear a suit? Like, that's not me. So we're gonna have to come to like some kind of a middle arrangement. Maybe I'll just wear the jacket with nothing on underneath and see if that helps.
Maybe you should wear like a matador's coat, like, with like big shoulder epaulets.
Yes.
Like a big black cowboy duster.
I've got the hat.
Also good. Yes. See, there's a lot of options here.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what's going on with me. That's the end of my second. He said, "Man corset of valor."
Nice.
I like that. Embrace the polo. That's true. I could do that. Leo says, or vest, like a biker with patches on his vest. Yes, I could do that.
I misunderstood.
Wait a minute. Why do I have to dress as a gay Zorro? I mean, that's
Gotta get
hilarious.
those- Gotta get-
Zorro, the gay blade.
And
Got to
I'll
get
do
those
it.
ratings.
Hello.
Sex sells,
That was
baby.
my Z.
Yeah, it's a good Z too. Never quit being you.
Hey, Charlie's here from Florida today. What's up, Trucker Charlie? Let's pop into the show. Scott, this was your idea, so you can kick us off with building and designing weapons. What's your grand scheme?
Well, a couple of things. I guess when the idea came up, I was thinking that there's a lot of similarities between building like a sci-fi weapons system, although you could go beyond that and talk about like your technology level in general, like star travel and all that. But like, so one of the things that in military sci-fi is pretty important to readers is some solid weapon systems. And, they want it to feel kind of, realistic as possible given the genre. But also the same with fantasy and urban fantasy is those world buildings. And I guess there's weapon systems, unique weapon systems in fantasy are more common than they used to be. I mean, it used to be fantasy sword.
Yeah. Right.
But now
Exactly.
the swords can be quite a bit different as we see.
Right.
And I've done different types of, I've written in different people's universes in my own, and I've gone from just pure hand wavium to kind of current day that's maybe like, for example, in the Renegade Star, the weapons haven't really changed a lot over all this time because they're still basically firearms, slug throwers, even in Galaxy's Edge, they talk about slug throwers and stuff like that.
Yep.
I remember watching a really interesting, it's been a couple of years ago now, about this guy breaking down what it would take to make a plasma pistol. And the analogy he uses, you'd have to have like this giant thermoelectric or a hydroelectric dam making enough power to run an entire city, basically, to make this thing work. And the heat would immediately incinerate anybody who used the weapon. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't seem like a real practical weapon.
There's some significant downsides.
So, I mean, and you can most people just assume, plasma blaster is cool. So in a lot of genres, they're just going to go with it. But I mean, how much do you want to put into that? I know Rick Partlow, he did a couple of podcasts, video things on his own channel talking about weapon systems and kind of what it meant, and that it could have a lot of repercussions for how your story goes, because it would limit tactics. It might think the way people think, and stuff like that. So that's kind of where the idea came from.
Well, and it's funny that you mentioned the tactics part of it, because in writing the Valor trilogy, there were a lot of technologies that I created that forced me to rethink the tactics that the Marines were using, because I was basing all of those tactics on like current modern military troop small unit tactics. But if they, like you're saying, if they have the technology like drones or even micro drones, or they have capability to look through walls now, like that technology is going to be even more so in the future. And so like wrapping your mind around what technology updates and stuff you have for
I remember
really affect.
One of the things I remember about Rick's, and if you're here, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I remembered him talking about he had a reason why drones were not used in the military engagements, and basically, and he had a reason for the story which made sense. But as a writer's perspective, is having remote combat just took so much out of the story, because you couldn't have the characters being out there in danger and several things like that. And I always have a problem with drones. I've written several stories where I kind of talk about drones, but I never use them. Like if they have drones, they would be using them way more than I have them in my stories, just because they don't really interest me, and I guess I forget about them. And so I've tried to kind of change that a little bit, and have some drones gone bad and stuff like that.
Right.
I think in a lot of ways this kind of touches on, like, are you writing hard science fiction, or are you writing, the more fun action adventure kind of science fiction? Because I mean, if you're writing the hard stuff, you've got to be able to explain everything. That's what those readers want. They want solid science. But I mean, if you're just like the science fiction I've written, it's very hand wavium,
Yeah.
There's a law that says the civilians can have slug throwers, but only the military and law enforcement can have
Right.
energy weapons. And the
Mhm.
energy weapons are just blasters. They're plasma weapons. I don't bother going into the details of how they work and stuff.
Well, you can
But
do things like you can have a plasma weapon can actually be you're firing a projectile still, but it basically becomes
But it's on fire.
Yeah, it becomes
Yeah.
energized because of the speed and velocity, whatever, and so on
Right.
and so forth.
So I think it comes down to one of those things is what audience are you writing to?
Yeah.
Are you writing to a Star Wars audience, or are you writing to a Isaac Asimov audience? Oh, and I watched the first 2 episodes of Foundation, and I read those books like 40 years ago, but
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
know.
worried.
The
How
first
was
couple episodes, I liked it. I'll be honest with you. I have a real hard time remembering the detail. I mean, I know the broad strokes of the story, but I have a hard time remembering the details in the book.
Yeah.
But from what I can recall, it seems to be sticking pretty close. They obviously changed stuff.
I remember Friday had to have some sort of like something on her fork so she didn't stab herself in the face because she was so fast as an android or something like that. And that's literally the only thing I remember from the entire series.
They haven't done a lot with her yet, but you can kind of see it coming. But overall, it looks fantastic.
I've never read the book, so I'm going to
like I said, I read them in high school, and that was a long time ago.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah.
I'm really worried about the Wheel of Time series since we've taken a slight segue because I'm just worried.
Sorry. I just said Asimov, and that
we don't have to go into that. I'm
No.
worried about some of these book adaptations being complete suck jobs. But
yeah. Well, and I think it's we talked a little bit about either last episode, episode before last, where sometimes it just becomes stories by committee, and the people that are dishing out the money are the ones that are making decisions, and that those people aren't necessarily writers,
or have maybe not even read the series,
or read the books. Yeah.
So back to weapons and magic systems. Sorry,
Nagling has
that
a
was my
question, actually.
fault.
Do you guys think today's books will have the same impact on future weapon systems and the same, like something like out of Heinlein's Starship Troopers had on today's Sci-Fi? I mean, I think so. And the thing is like, I try to. It's hard to go from like, remember the original Star Trek, or even the Next Generation, where they had the tricorders, or the original Star Trek where they had the
flip phone
communicators and like touchpads. All that stuff's becoming reality now.
Yeah,
like,
Next Generation, they basically had iPads, and that's how they got the reports and stuff.
Right. And so like all of that stuff, like 20, 30 years later, is becoming reality. And so like I'm trying to think now, like having the technology that what we have now, how do I up the ante on that and make it so it could be something that is but it's hard to say, because like you said, Scott, the energy it would take to create a pulse rifle is ridiculous, and the energy that it puts out is ridiculous too. But then you look at advances in like battery technology or laser technology and all that
and
stuff.
maybe there's a workaround on the energy requirements. Maybe that's just something we haven't figured that hack yet. But like, for example, a good example is like rail guns and stuff. That's pretty sci-fi, but there's lots of examples of those getting developed on a grand scale by the military, but also you'll see where people made a rail gun, or in my Blue Sun Armada, they're just called accelerator weapons. And I don't go into great details, but you kind of get the idea that they're kind of like rifles. They take a magazine, they move some sort of projectile, and they use an accelerator, which is probably some magnetic switching of polarity type of things. But one thing I did take about that, like I have a character in book 3, and she's switching a magazine, and she's trying to remember what she's supposed to do because she's not a soldier. But the magazines do multiple things. They have ammunition, so they have the actual material that's being fired through it. They have kind of a top off for the battery, but they also have a heat sink. So every one you take out, you throw it away, and it gets rid of some of the heat that would build up. And
that's cool.
I just threw a bunch of stuff, and it feels fun. I don't know if people will like that or if it's really that good of science, but I like the idea that, and that actually you could have a weapon where the ammunition is based. Well, I had one series where the weapon was preloaded, and it had all the ammunition it would ever fire in it, and you couldn't reload it. But the problem again was heat, and I wish I'd thought of it when I wrote that one. That instead of having magazines keeping your magazines to switch them out. You literally are putting magazines and then throwing them away because they get too hot. You just getting rid of the heat.
There was a video game series called Mass Effect that did something like that. The weapons had this big block of some super dense something or other in it, and it would just shave off little pieces of it.
That's cool.
That became your projectile, but it needed such a tiny amount that one block would
almost a molecular level.
But you constantly had to switch out the heat sinks because it just got so flaming
That's
hot.
Interesting. I've always wanted to play that game, but they're really good, really fun. I figured it'd be a big time suck.
It is a big time suck.
Nothing says driving a remote control car with the GoPro on it and running it in the middle of an enemy before blowing the debt brick attached. What's crazy about this is I've had several conversations with Walt about weapon systems and about modern weapon systems and even modern military systems that you're like, nah, that's sci-fi. That's not what they use in modern, but they use drones in the modern military where they have infantry guys that have these little drones and they throw up and they've got, hundreds or dozens or hundreds of drones that are just above them that are taking these images of the field and they're bringing images together and like just crazy stuff that I'm like, that's crazy. They don't really do that.
We were rigging firecrackers to RC cars when I was a kid.
Yeah, okay.
I know they're using them for something other than that now.
Yeah.
But then if you take that, let's take that that idea of the automation of the battlefield to a further extreme. I mean, you go far enough in the future, it may be that there's a bloodless battlefield where it's nothing but like suits that go running while there's some guy back behind the wire who's on a treadmill or something,
It's like that part in Guardian of the Galaxies too, where all the people are
all the golden people. They're in drones.
Well,
how does that become more challenging as a story if you don't have an actual life or death? You can actually over technology these things, even sci-fi. If you remove the human real life element, it's to the detriment of any story, I think.
Well, it just boils down to what do the readers care about? Why are they reading this book? Is it to see the action of these robots fighting? But then you could have, the what's the word I'm thinking of? If the robot is your story or if the drone is your story, like losing that drone or losing that robot could have an emotional connection with the reader, and it doesn't have to be death. I remember having a conversation with another sci-fi author about loss and about pushing the reader through and affecting them negatively. And he was like, well, I don't have any more characters to kill. I can't do this. And I said, well, you don't have to kill characters, for that kind of reaction. There's a whole bunch of other stuff you can do. A lot of other stakes, that's the word I was looking for, that you can throw into the book that will push the reader through.
Well, like in Game of Thrones, one of the biggest problems is every character, at least like the first 4 books, are trying to get someplace and they never can get where they're trying to go, and they never wind up where they intended to go, and it causes a lot of tension, and you keep waiting for certain characters to meet up, and that's kind of like a death when they don't,
right?
And some things like that. I was going to talking about the robot battles. Actually, my current series, Blue Sun Armada, and this is kind of a little bit of spoiler, but I'm assuming everybody here is probably mostly writing and maybe not reading the books that much, but they were sent out to kind of prepare the world for humanity. So they're not human, but they think they are. Mm-hmm. And so, and there's a bunch of things where I'm layering that in so the readers won't feel too betrayed, but you're going to come to a crisis of what exactly is humanity by the time they meet real humans. And you're going to be vested in these characters, but they're actually mostly, they have a lot of flesh and blood, but they're cyborg. They have a humanity core, which is, kind of essentially, it's like the pre-programmed kind of, what people think, how they should behave and act. But they're also, and you'll see very clearly in the series that every kind of caste in that society has a job. And so they're much more like machines, because like your warrior class mostly fights wars and your scientists mostly come up with innovations, and there's crossover. But when they find themselves trapped in these kind of decisions, they can't escape their fate. They feel like sometimes it's a little bit like real life with humans, even though they're not human. because they're trying to make decisions, but the unit galaxy just isn't letting them do what they want.
Well, and I think something to touch on what Chuck said earlier about whether you're writing something like Star Wars or something that's like a hard sci-fi is, sometimes you just want the cool effect. Like, I just want to do something cool, and you don't have to worry about, how is this actually going to function? And sometimes I find myself getting hemmed up on that aspect a lot because I come up with something and I'm like, is that really going to work? And then I'm after days or weeks of trying to figure it out or trying to figure out a way to make it work, or if people are going to read it some way, finally I'm just like, you know what, that's what I want to do, and that's fun, so that's how I'm going to write it.
And
it's science fiction, and the biggest that couldn't happen. I hate the people that are like, that couldn't happen. I'm like, first of all, you're in a galaxy like 2,000 light years away from Earth, and there's laser blasts.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you're traveling faster than light.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't.
Lots
it
of
amazes
problems.
me. It amazes me where people draw their lines for this stuff. You know what I mean? It just, I can't.
Like when they're mad at Josh,
so you might as well just write what you want.
Yeah.
A show that did a really good job, I thought, Josh, of what you're talking about between the explain the science and cool shit just happens. I thought The Expanse did a really good job of that.
Oh yeah.
Because they explain their travel and how they survive and the way the different gravities affect the bodies and all that. But when it came to the proto-molecule and all the portals opening, they were just like, "Hey, here, shit happened.
Right,
do something with
figure it out."
Well, it's the only problem I had with the science, if you want to call it that, with The Expanse is, like, I thought all the weapons worked fairly well. Like, even though I don't know about all the missile stuff, how that works, like the technical stuff, it looked fun, it looked cool. The only big problem that I had was the actual, like, when they moved the asteroid. Like, do you remember when the proto-molecule moved it?
Yeah.
Right. And like, there's no
propulsion system.
There's nothing. It just moved. It was like magic, right?
Yeah, they could do that because they're proto-molecules.
Right. So that like threw me, because like everything else about the story, everything else had about the way everything worked was kind of like you could assume that it was built on actual physics. Like, you're like,
because they did certain things to enforce that.
Right.
Yeah.
But then when something like that happened, I like completely got thrown out of the story, because I was like, how did it happen? Like,
well, I mean, but don't you think maybe that was kind of the point, to just show just how far advanced beyond the advancements we were witnessing this thing was?
Right.
You know, I mean,
it's true. I mean, that's true. But
which would be the kind of, like, you think about if we're an invasion scenario. I mean, how much more advanced would they be than us by the time they get here? And would we have any chance at all?
Right,
unless they were just like really overextended. Maybe they get here, they're all like half dead because of their long trip and insane. Maybe we can beat them, but
like Tom says, hand
waving
oxidizes the closer you get to the sun.
I like that.
I'm going to write that. Somebody use that in the book.
That should be in there.
I want that on a t-shirt.
On another thing. So when we're talking about developing weapon systems and stuff, I mean, you guys have some ideas on how you kind of get organized. So, like, for example, I know a lot of people, and I've done it, is I take weapons I know, and then I try to science fictionize them or fantasyize them. And so, I mean, like, do you make charts? Do you have a spreadsheet? Do you have, I mean, how do you put that together and keep track of it so you're consistent?
It depends on what story I'm writing. Like right now, working on Tranquility, we just have, like, we know the base kind of concept that we're going with is mechs, and they've got to have weapons that you can have on a mech. And so, like, you can't have a big, like, I don't know, like, I can't even think of something that, but we put on like Gatling guns or micro missile pods, or like all of these things that you're like realistically,
familiar stuff.
Yes, realistically, or you can have this on this chassis if this existed, not like an 18-foot long howitzer. Like, you couldn't walk around with that on, right?
Yeah, and the recoil when you fired it would be problematic.
Yeah,
some of that anime stuff, man.
So like, it just really kind of depends on the story and what's going on. Like with my Savage Stars, not Savage Stars book. It's basically gladiators fighting in this arena. So I originally had them using like swords and like kind of like a medieval type weapon system for everyone. And then I was like, you know what? We're in the future. Let's hype this up a little bit. Like we can have like like the whips that the dude uses in Iron Man 2, like electro whips and like plasma lined axe blades that have like a plasma laser on the outside or something like that. Just like ramping it up to 1,000 and just like what can you do with that? And how many different things could like they have what's called an i3 chip that is it's an implant and you can connect to computer systems and you can do different things, and they have these inhibitors that are put on so they can't access the main computers, but they can access some weapon techniques. So I can come up with weapons that you can like not have to use your hands with or different things. So I'm just like brainstorming all of these cool things, but also in the realm of Star Wars where it doesn't have to make sense. It could just be fun. And and so like I said, it just kind of depends on what project I'm working on and how what platforms I'm working with. What are they military people? Are they not military people? Because the main character in my book, they start out in these really powered armor suits, and so I based all the weapons on what could a power armor suit have. And I don't know. I think designing sci-fi weapons is really fun. If you kind of like, you don't when you're playing with your kids or whatever, and you're like, I shot you, and the kid's like, no, I've got this force field on, you can't hit me. And you're like, but I just shot you. And like, no, I've got a force field.
I have infinity force field +1.
Right.
You can't touch me.
The greatest thing I think about sci-fi weapons is giving yourself limitations on what the weapons can do, and then forcing your characters into the position where those weapons are limited. Especially with like riding it. We mentioned this last week too, how it kind of gets old, like going back and forth. Like he knelt down behind cover and shot off the 4 magazines, and then moved over here and unloaded and reloaded and shot. Like, how do you keep ramping up the tension and keeping it interesting for the reader?
Right.
Well, you can write it. Maybe I'll do that in my next series where cover is basically irrelevant, and they don't train you to duck down, look behind cover, because there's literally nothing that you can take cover behind. Right. Kind of like you remember Ender's Game? If you read the actual books, there was a long series of training deals where they were in 3-dimensional space and zero gravity. And Ender was the first one to learn, or I think he was the first one to learn, that you could put your feet forward and freeze your own feet. And then they couldn't shoot you anymore because they could just shoot your feet, but your feet were already frozen. Then you could like lean around and shoot, and people could move behind you like a screen. Yep. And they had all this 3-dimensional but they'd kind of have to push you. And the thing is you're almost like a sacrificed player because you use the technique for that particular battlefield and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think that no matter what, whether you're coming up with a weapon system or a magic system or whatever, I think that the limitations thing is an absolute must. I think you have to have that. Otherwise, you end up with the Superman conundrum.
Right.
You've got that indestructible character that is virtually unstoppable, but no one can relate to.
Well, I was going to bring that in. I was going to bring it in earlier when you guys were talking about how does this apply to fantasy and superhero fiction, because you can lose the humanity connection.
Absolutely.
I watched a real interesting review where they're talking about what was wrong with Shazam, and their main problem was that they only fought in the sky. And so when they're fighting in the sky, they're just kind of getting knocked around, and there's like no consequences. But you watch any superhero movie, when the fight actually matters, they're on the ground. And he went into a lot of detail. It's kind of a side tangent on that as to why that makes things matter more.
Well, because what you're doing is the viewer/reader, they need something to latch on to that they can relate to in the real world.
Well, because people don't understand fighting in midair. It's kind of like
but they understand somebody flying through a Starbucks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lucas says he slapped a fresh clip into his bolt action double
Double
barrel revolver. And then
Hell
Tom said,
yeah.
don't forget the silencer. You say you want Titanfall to be real. Well, I have a version in a book you can read called Blood and Steel, because that's how we based our mechs on. Titanfall.
Yeah. Well, and part of that when we started this, I was like, well, I know Josh will at least have something to talk about, because I remember you doing the world building. Was that last summer before last when you guys were really getting into that? And I was like, man, you're putting a lot of thought into this.
Well, yeah,
I'm like pew pew.
Like I like taking existing ideas and then modifying them and like you tweaking them. And what we were saying earlier about ramping it up is and giving them limits on the weapon systems is like for Tranquility, our mechs were not designed as battle mechs. They were designed as construction mechs. And we did that so they weren't like the all-powerful, like you could just walk in and blow everything up. And then it's
kind of brilliant.
We took that idea and we're like, okay, they're construction mechs, but they're not just going to do one or two things. They're on a colony. They need to do multiple things. So let's make them modular. Then how do we take that modular idea and add in these weapon systems and all this stuff? So like you can take an idea like a mech and you know, people say mech and they think Mech Warrior and these big lumbering deals. And we took the Titanfall idea and made them more agile, made them quicker, and then took the construction aspect of it and put a whole bunch of stuff together. So
yeah, then when is being modular a strength and when is it a weakness?
Right.
Kid had an earlier comment that I wanted to point out where he says a good point, kind of going along with what you're saying. He says things go wrong, lessons learned in the middle of wars. Talks about the Phantom 2 was designed without a gun because they thought guided missiles made guns obsolete. And that's I've used that in different like in my brothers in arms, they're kind of mired in trench warfare, and there's some things they've kind of forgotten, like a soft kill. So a soft kill is basically when you destroy the ground underneath the tank and it sinks. You can't break the tank, but you can sink it.
You can damn sure stop it.
And stuff like that. So it's that's a good point.
It's funny you put that up there. I actually stumbled across a video on YouTube from my old unit when I was enlisted. When I was an F4 Wild Weasel guy. And he was right about that. They didn't have the miniguns on the front.
So they designed the S4 without a gun, and then they built
but a fuck ton of missiles.
Then they built the A10
and G79. Oh yeah, the A10 and those things. Good.
Just a flying gun.
I got to see those live on a range one time, and holy shit, that is just death on two engines, man.
I remember seeing a video in in Vietnam where they used prop engine planes more because the jets were so fast it was hard to engage ground targets because they just and so they had like the slower. That's probably where the A10 came from. Is they're a little bit slower to hit things on the ground.
Well, and it's funny that you mentioned planes and being slower and faster, because that was one of the I remember in one of my first science fiction books that I wrote. I still have it. I hand wrote it on paper. I had fighters, like, you know, big carriers and then fighters, and they still kind of carry on in the books, but that I have published. But like fighters wouldn't be a real thing, like the way that space, like actual space works. Fighters
might as well be a drone.
No, and there'd be no such thing as a dogfight unless you want to count it from 1,000 miles away.
Yeah, I think actually in that line of thinking, I read all the David Weber, the Honor Harrington books, and his stance on space warfare was just a whole bunch of missiles, kind of like back in when they, the men of war, big galley ships, right, but pounding each other with cannons.
You guys are going to have to just stop right now because I have fighters in my Blue Sun Armada.
Oh no! Well, but that's the thing. Like, the fighters are fun, and so like you have them in there. And
that's why there's so many dogfights in Star Wars,
right?
Because it's fun.
But that's the thing that people talk about Star Wars is like, well, you couldn't do that in Star Wars. I mean, first of all, they have laser swords, they use the Force, and they have fighters and like a big giant walking carpet. Yeah.
And now they can command things from across the galaxy.
Apparently,
and make things happen.
They can
like even though they're not there,
hyperspace through other ships.
Yeah. Also very, very, very true.
So on that's the thing. Like building weapons, you can do in sci-fi. That's why one of the reasons I like sci-fi is you can do whatever you want. You can do 100% anything you want. The problem is when you, like we said before, you don't put any restrictions. You don't put any
Right.
like you were mentioning having a heat sink in your magazine. In whatever story you were talking about, Scott, where they pulled it out, it took some of the heat off the weapon. That's brilliant. Like I would have never thought about that as a problem you have to deal with. But whatever you're dealing with, I mean, heat does affect things. So you have.
I really now we're talking. I need to have a scene where they ignore their heat sinks and they just go Nova.
Oh, 100%.
That's going to happen.
It just melts the rifle or whatever.
Yeah.
Man, the thing that I have done with my military that I'm writing in Savage Stars is they use pulse rifles, and I didn't steal it from Galaxy's Edge because Galaxy's Edge stole it from everybody else, but it's having like magazine battery packs, right? You slap in your charge pack or whatever it is. But what I thought too is they could still have a residual charge left over, maybe not enough to power the pulse rifle, but it's still got some charge. And they can use them as like basically grenades at the end of their life. Once you've expended enough charge for the weapon.
The self-destruct. And maybe that's not what they were intended to do, but people
you can throw them.
Kind of cool.
And you could have your training sergeant say, "We're not going to have any more of these modified grenades at the end of things. Those are government property. You'll keep your magazines, guys." And they're like just throwing away and blowing up enemies.
No, and that's 100%. Like it's not designed for that. But when they run out, instead of just dropping it on the floor next to them, they chuck it and either shoot it or hit it with something else, and it can give that something like they drop it and a new guy just drops it and he's not aware because it's not something that they teach, but it's just this battle thing that they do. Like in Vietnam, they did a whole bunch of stuff that you weren't supposed to do with weapons, and they do it all the time.
Did either of you guys read Scalzi's Old Man's War series?
It's on my list.
I read the first book, but I don't remember anything about it.
Do you? Well, they had a really interesting take on their rifles, as I recall, because what it was is you had programmable ammunition, so you could you insert a magazine or whatever, and then you say full auto piercing, and the ammo would it was made out of some sort of nano stuff, and it would sort of manipulate into what it needed to be to correspond with the order. And it was, I don't know, I thought that was pretty cool. But is that
you got to be like full auto, barely a little tickle, and then you'd be screwing around, shooting each other,
stun rounds or explosive rounds, or you could say every other round explosive. So you'd have one armor piercing to punch a hole in something, and then right behind it is an explosive round to blow the shit out of it.
Well, it's just like the Judge Dredd pistol, the
exactly same thing. Yeah, same thing.
Say what you want about the first movie with Stallone, but I loved that movie, especially when he comes up and he's like double whammy, and the gun's like double whammy, and he turns. I thought that was the best thing in that.
That was good. I was channel surfing and caught the newer one on and was watching a little.
I watched that recently too, and I enjoyed it. It's extreely violent, but I don't have a problem with that. It's just hard to watch with the family.
That one was much more comics accurate than the Stallone version, because the comics were super bloody.
Oh, you're talking about the one with what's his name?
Urban.
Carl
Urban. Yeah, that was pretty good.
That one was violent as shit.
As hell, yes.
The slow-mo thing was kind of cool, though. I mean, I was like, okay, you ripped off the Matrix, but cool, whatever.
Yeah.
It gave some really nice visuals.
Oh, Guy's got a great idea here. Mechs with cappuccino machines, stopping wars with coffee.
There you go.
There you go.
I mean, honestly, if you haven't figured out how to put a coffee maker on your mech while you're in the middle of war, then what are you doing with your life?
What's the point?
When you went into your talk about the little bit of charge being a grenade that you're done, I was thinking, well, could you have like snacks on it?
Yeah.
I can't talk to you right now.
Earl Grey, hot.
You got to look for things the soldier in the field would want. They'd be like, oh man, if this just had a stick of gum right now, I'd be in heaven. Or if we're going to be honest with soldiers, it'd be chewing tobacco most likely, but whatever. Yeah, or cigarettes.
True.
Pack of condoms on the other side.
One of the things that I usually try to do a lot is, instead of, well, and we've already kind of talked about it, as having like the magazines or whatever. You watch some movies and like some sci-fi movies have laser guns and they don't have to reload. Or like you're saying, Scotty, you have like a throwaway, like this weapon has a one charge deal and you can use it till it was done.
Mhm.
But those little things you can do that add limited use to the weapon. I think that like reloading I think it's an underrated tactic to use in writing, because it lets you pause the action where you need to do. And you can, like when I reload, especially writing Tranquility, when they reload their mechs, it takes a minute to reload. And so in the action of them reloading, I can kind of give a little bit of, like, he looked over here and he saw this, or something else happened over here. And it kind of gives you that pause in your writing where you can throw in other stuff. And it's not just a straight like action.
Yeah.
action.
And reloads and clearing a malfunction is what separates people that go to the range and an actual combat operator, because
100%.
yeah, because trying to deal with a malfunction or a reload under pressure, you're like, I know how to do this, and you're like click like 4 times to get the magazine in, and this is somebody who's trained.
I hate doing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad. So we used to have to do 2 different courses of fire on the PD. We'd had to do the city course and the seapost course. And the seapost course I could do with my eyes closed. It's
literally
easy. But the city course, like you have to do stovepipes, you have to do double feeds, you've got to do like different mechanical clearing deals. And I always would stress out, because I'm like, is this tap rack roll? Is this pull tap rack? I don't know what I'm doing.
You wind up just fucking racking it like 8 times and hoping something works when you're done. But the worst thing ever, and a lot of people will know this, is an actual true double feed on an M4. You might as well just fucking throw that thing in the dirt, because you got to like take out a hammer and you're like trying to bang the shit out of the chamber to make it anyway. But yeah, that's an ugly feeling. And the thing is, it gives you a way to differentiate between somebody who really knows what they're doing and then somebody who thinks they do, and then somebody who's just not really as prepared. Somebody who's a showboat versus somebody who actually paid attention in class. You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny, like you can have an expert for everything, but it seems like the people, like we were talking about movies earlier, the people that have all the money to spend on that kind of stuff don't spend it, because you watch so many movies and TV shows. You're like, you're stupid. Like that Glock does not have 47 rounds, and you should have changed it. I think that's one of the things why I love John Wick. Besides the fact that it's Keanu Reeves and it's kick-ass, is he reloads all the time. I love that.
Well, and people don't understand how fast you burn through ammunition. I mean, you're just going to be out all the time. Like there was a big SWAT encounter like 10 years ago out on the East Coast, and the training came back, and it was so bad that people were throwing loaded magazines to the SWAT team in the truck because they were all out. And so after that, we had to carry. We were told to carry. We had to carry at least 120 rounds on our person and 500 on our gear. And so you had to basically carry a backpack. If you think about how many magazines that is, and you can fire like 2 or 3 rounds a second. Just firing single auto. I mean, you'd burn through 3 30-round magazines in like 2 minutes, easy. In a real hot fight, and you think about how hard it would be to carry 20 of those magazines and how much they would weigh and where the hell you would put them. It's interesting. That's one of the reasons they developed the M16 in the first place, is because the M14 was 308 and you couldn't carry that much ammunition. We could carry like 5 times as much.
Well, again, that goes,
and they changed the tactics.
That goes to realism, and taking into account weight is one of the big limiting factor too. Is are your sci-fi warriors, are they in powered gear? Are they in like an exosuit, or do they have any of that gear at all? But even then, powered armor and exosuits can't carry unlimited weight, and that weight will slow you down. Like mass wise, it'll slow you down too. And
what happens when you have to climb? Okay, so now you have exoskeleton that can carry unlimited ammunition. Well, you got to go up this rope. How much will the rope carry?
100%.
Can you walk across this sandy beach without sinking?
Yeah.
Can you go?
If you're going to try and project forward for stories with realistic weapon systems, you would have to think about all these problems you guys are bringing up, and then how could those be solved?
Yeah.
Because that's what people are going to be working towards. They're going to want a more efficient combatant in the situation, so they're going to want to eliminate things like weight, reload times, stuff like that. So I mean that's kind of something you want to keep in mind when you're designing this stuff.
I'd like to see a future warrior come back, into the present time to do some sort of raid and run into like a normal commercial house and just fall straight into the basement because they weigh like 1,000 pounds and
Right?
the floor can't hold them, and they're like, I can't get out of the basement, I'm stuck.
Walt says this is why we have robot mules now. They carry the ammo. Do you really have robot mules that carry ammo? I mean, that's kind of cool.
They also call them new guys. No, I'm kidding. New guy, carry this shit.
Then you're like, it's like that. It's the real life robot dude of that one guy in Saving Private Ryan that's carrying all the ammo around, and he kills that guy with a knife. Is that right? Doesn't he kill a guy with a knife, or he watches the dude get killed with a knife? Now I can't remember.
Well,
he said they do have robot mules.
That's the best news I've heard all day.
Picture it didn't happen, Walt.
Yeah.
So what did he say? SOCOM has been using them for 10 years. 10 years. Really?
I could see that.
See, this is what I'm talking about. Like, I talked to Walt about all this stuff, and I'm like, I'm thinking this, and I'm thinking this, and this would be really cool. He's like, we did that 15 years ago. I'm like, well, screw off, Walt. I don't know. Okay.
Talking to Walt about the military, just the chain of command and the organizational structure and the acronyms and the weapon systems is always an education. That guy, if you want so much.
If you, as a military sci-fi author, if you just want to like sit and call yourself dumb and stupid all day long, talk to Walt, because then you'll get done on a phone call with Walt and you're like, God, I'm so stupid.
But he'll never make you feel stupid because he's a nice guy, but he definitely knows that stuff. I usually like try to take one or two things out of our conversations and use them because I know I can't digest that much information unless he's going to like actually edit my book and go, come on, Moon. I told you this. We've been over this. What's your problem?
Oh, I don't know if I can click that link. It's on Facebook. It's on the Facebook feed. Hold on. Anyway, great conversation today, peeps. I always love talking about making up shit for a living. What next week, Scott? You said that Craig might be good.
Craig Martell is scheduled to come on next week, so he did mention that he's kind of like me. He's going to need a couple of reminders. He's got like 4 alarms, and has it written on his whiteboard. Because that's 11 a.m. where he's at, which apparently is early. I don't know. The guys just did a nationwide tour of like, dozens and dozens of stops.
I can't believe that guy drove all
I just can't believe
it.
That's like stuff you're like, nobody does that.
Yeah, and he did.
Hold my beer.
So is he coming on to talk about Vegas or what?
Yes.
I didn't actually specify that. I was like, can you come on and talk to us? So we'll get some questions and
visit, please.
I love, like, Scott's like, I'll see if Craig wants to come on the show. Okay. He said yes, but I don't know what we're going to talk about.
Well, I didn't know. And then we talked about this like last week, and this morning, like, do we have a guest? And I'm like, I haven't asked him yet. You mean like you wanted me to go look for somebody now? But Josh had you have a few hookups now with all your connections.
Why can I not see this thing on that Walt's post? I can't find it, Walt.
It's probably like one of those Facebook things that you always post that don't actually have a link, and then people are trying to click on it and they get all mad.
That's not a real picture. Is that a real picture? No, that looks photoshopped. I mean, it looks cool, but that looks photoshopped. Oh, and then he sent me another one. That is a ridiculous looking mule.
But did he message it to you, or is it on the?
He messaged it to me. But there's one that he posted in the. And if you're watching on YouTube, the Facebook feed is different. Like, there's a different text on Facebook than there is in YouTube. So he posted it in our Facebook group under this thing. So if you want to check it out, if you're watching on YouTube, go to Facebook, type in Keystroke Medium, join the group. You can find the video where we're at, and then you could see where he's linked that picture. It looks pretty cool, actually.
I think I'm going to name every Master of Arms in all of my books from here going forward Walt.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Oh, it could be like the running gag. Like, you guys remember the Final Fantasy games where they always had a Sid in the Final Fantasy games. Regardless of the plot, Sid was also like always like some smart person. It could always be Walt. Like, Walt is the guy in your
I also remember we always had a fighter jock or somebody named Carter freaking Hayes when your son was born.
True. And he sent a video. Nice. Okay, yeah. So next week we're gonna have Greg Martell on the show. Who knows what we're gonna talk about? We'll probably talk about his books. Talk about 20 books
Maybe.
coming up in. Can you guys? It's
Jesus,
a month away.
Fuck, we better
This
like
year
really work
is
on our presentation.
That's right. We need to work on our podcast presentation for this year's 20 books. Whoops. No, seriously, it's good. We have it down. We know exactly what we're doing because we're professionals.
I'm on a couple other panels too, and I'm not sure how that's going to go.
Everybody that joined us in the live chat today, thank you guys for hanging out with us. It was a blast having you guys live. If you're listening on the live feed, didn't know we had if you're listening on the audio feed, didn't know we have a live show Monday-ish, 2 p.m.-ish is when we like to say our show airs. Come hang out with us on YouTube or in our Facebook group, Keystroke Medium. If you didn't
like, subscribe,
coffee,
bring a friend.
keystroke.medium.com/coffee. You can get some of our fantastic blends. Writer's Block is the best. Scott just ordered some Word Fuel.
I
You
did.
can hop on there and get you some coffee to assist in your writing needs, because they all know if you have writer's block, come to keystroke.medium.com/coffee. Get you a bag of Writer's Block. That will help you in all of your, like, it'll make your writing like 100 times better. That's scientifically proven.
We have some Keystroke Media merchandise too. And I know there's not a link, but if you click on checkout, but then you click return to store, it'll take you to, like, if you want a sweatshirt or mouse pad or all the other things, if you want a coffee cup. But we're going to get that link fixed. We just noticed that wasn't super user friendly the other day. So we're going to have our web designers doing that as we speak.
We'll get it figured out. All right, peoples. We're going to get out of here. Thank you guys for hanging out with us on this Monday afternoon. Come back next week. We're going to talk about some reading, some writing, and of course, everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium.
And also Josh's beard grooming supplies.
Later, guys.
Bye.